Welcome to the Love Deep Lab podcast, helping you integrate sex, sexiness, sacredness, and science in your life and your bedroom. And now, your host, Dr. Stormy.
Hi, I'm your host, Dr. Stormy. Thanks for joining us on the Love Deep Lab podcast today. Today, we're going to talk about something we all have to do to stay alive. We're going to talk about breathing and a particular kind of breath today. We have a Wim Hof instructor with us today as our guest, but we're going to just talk about breath and why good breathing will change your life, change your health, change your sex, and all of the things. So we all have to breathe. We might as well do it in a fabulous way. So I'm so excited for this episode today, and thanks for joining us. And welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you, Stormy. I appreciate you having me on your podcast, and excited to dive into the topics of breath and sex and all kinds of other things.
Awesome. I'm just going to introduce you, Jeremy, quickly. Jeremy is a certified Wim Hof Method instructor and a passionate believer in the power of the individual to directly affect one's health and well-being. Jeremy was introduced to the Wim Hof Method while traveling in a van in New Zealand 5 years ago. The powerful benefits of the method and the changes he saw in other people close to him who also practiced encouraged him to dig deeper into the method. For Jeremy, the Wim Hof Method is a beautiful tool that he wants to share with people so they can regain their inner strength and take control of their health in a natural and powerful way. So awesome. So happy to have you here. And I've had the privilege of doing one of Jeremy's workshops, and it was amazing. So I'm super excited just to have you here with us. So, a van in New Zealand is quite the intro, but I would love to just have you talk a little bit about, for you, how you found this breath and how it has changed your life.
So I found the Wim Hof Method. And those that aren't familiar with the Wim Hof Method, it consists of 3 pillars. It consists of a breathwork practice, mindset practice, and then exposure to cold water or the cold. So in a nutshell, that's the Wim Hof Method. And 5 years ago when I was traveling through New Zealand, again, I was living in a van, cruising around, taking a little time off work, and I met a guy out surfing and kind of befriended him, and he invited me to come back to his farm and stay the night. And his partner there, she had a prominent yoga studio in the North Island in New Zealand. And he was like, "Hey, there's this Wim Hof workshop coming up." And I'm like, "What is Wim Hof? Like, I don't know what this is." And he's like, "Oh yeah, you ever heard of this guy? Like, climbed Mount Everest without a shirt on and like swam under Arctic sea ice." And then he makes these crazy claims that you can control your immune system and your hormonal system and breathe and do cold exposure to, in essence, heal your body. And so I was like, "Well, that sounds pretty cool. Let's check that out." So I went to the workshop, enjoyed it thoroughly. And then I just started breathing and exposing myself to the cold and working on my mind. And over the next 2 years, just kept showing a bunch of people it. And it wasn't until, it was 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago now, that I said, well, maybe I'll take this the next step further and actually become an instructor and teach workshops all around the country. And I'd say my biggest motivation to keep teaching was my mom suffered from a lot of anxiety. She would get stressed out if we, left for the airport. Didn't matter if we left 4 hours early. She was racing down the hill, and I could just feel her, nervous energy. And one day before we go into the airport, I said, "Hey, Mom, lay down. We got plenty of time. Let me just take you through 10, maybe 12 minutes of breathing." And I took her through the breathing, and it was like this magic pill or potion, because she got up, she started doing the laundry. She was like hanging out all relaxed until I had to say, "Wow, Mom, we got to go to the airport. Come on. Like, we're going to be late."
That's amazing.
So that's been really instrumental to just keep practicing, keep sharing this beautiful method with everybody.
Amazing. And thanks for the intro about it. So, many of you out there listening or watching will have heard of Wim Hof. Like Jeremy said, he's climbed Everest and like without a shirt and all these really, what we might say is impossible, right? And I think one of the things that you educated me on, Jeremy, and then as I've done other workshops and research myself, is that people thought that Wim was like an outlier, that he was like some magical zebra able to control his physiology like that. But his whole thing is that we can all do this, right?
Yeah, Wim's big message is, I'm not a guru. I'm not this person up on a pedestal. It's like we all have this innate ability and this innate power within us to withstand these challenges and stresses that we see on a daily basis. And through being aware of them, through being aware of our breath, and through voluntarily exposing ourselves to uncomfortable situations, i.e. going to an ice bath, taking a cold shower, doing some breath work that lowers the oxygen content temporarily in our body, we are introducing a voluntary stress, and we are training ourselves to deal with stress in a calm and collected manner, as opposed to overreacting to it and bringing more stress into our life just by our reactions to the event.
Amazing. Totally. I love how you explain that. And that's when I had done another Wim Hof workshop. I love that they were saying what you just said, is that this is training, right? So it is training, which is so cool. It's a practice, it's a training, but that we're kind of doing these like micro stressors to our system so that we learn to ground and stay calm and find our center, so that when the stressors of life happen, they don't land as deeply.
Yeah, they'll come. I mean, life is full of different stresses. You can't get rid of that, but that's what makes it beautiful. And if you compare it to going to the gym, you go to the gym, you lift weights. Next day, maybe your muscles are a little sore, you're a little tired, but the following day you come back stronger and more resilient. It's the same thing with the practicing your response to stress. And if we can introduce stress into our life and practice how to react to it, we are in essence training our mind and our body to deal with stress when it comes in a, out in the natural, in the world. Maybe a driver honks at you or cuts you off, or you're, in a fight with your spouse, or your boss is yelling at you. You learn to not overreact to it and just, take in the stress and, continue on with life.
Yeah, amazing. And the cold is a really fucking powerful teacher. Like, I gotta say, like, I'm just gonna own it. I hate the cold. Like, it's a bitch for me. And it's such a powerful teacher. Like, my first experience with the ice bath, with the ice immersion, was, I would describe it that it was so cold that I could think about nothing else. So the single focus, the focused attention was so powerful for me. And for me, people yell and do whatever they do, whatever their way is. Mine was to go completely quiet, go completely inward, stay focused on the mountain that I was looking at. But it's a powerful teacher.
Yeah, the cold is, I've been doing this for many years, and still every time I get in the cold, it's like this mental challenge of like, okay, here we go, because it doesn't get any warmer. You just learn how to deal with it better.
Amazing.
And, it's a good point what you say with being present, in our, modern society, there's been so many buzzwords: be present, be mindful, be in this place. And it's like, okay, so for some people, they can do that. They can take a moment, meditate, yoga practice, whatever it is, and be present. But for a lot of people, it's like, okay, I'm going to close my eyes and sit here and be present, but what else do I do? And you're like, oh, don't do anything. But the reality is, if we throw you in a big bucket of ice water, you're not going to be thinking about other stuff. You're just going to be surviving the situation, and it brings you into very present state of mind.
Amazing. I mean, it's such a powerful anchor. And I love that you just said that, because obviously I work a lot with myself and my clients on teaching mindfulness and meditation, but that the anchoring, a way to anchor, like a sensorial way to anchor, is something that we always work on. And the cold is a really, really good one. And it's also interesting, like, I'll notice how I approach the cold will differ sort of based on where I am in my own, day or stress level or neurologic level. Like, sometimes I just get right in. Other times I like toe my way in. Like, it's really, what do you think is going on with that? How different people approach the ice differently?
One thing I found with the ice is, it's such a mental practice. I mean, physically, everybody can go into the cold water for a minute or two. Like, our bodies are adapted. We're not going to get frostbite. We're going to hypothermia. Like, we can deal with that, even though it is challenging mentally and physically. Our bodies are fine. So it's really boils down to the mind and what state of mind you're in. And the cold and the ice is really a mirror to what's going on inside of you. So if you can, one day you might get in and it feels fine, you're relaxed, you're calm, and it's like a mirror to what's happening in your life. And some days I go in and I'm like, oh my God, this is so cold, like, and I think it shows what's going on in other parts of your life, and it kind of brings things to the surface.
Beautiful. And I say with my clients that to draw another metaphor, like whatever happens in life shows up in the bedroom and in our sexuality with ourselves and with partner, if we're having partnered sex, and what shows up in the bedroom shows up in life. And so it's like an interesting mirror. I would totally agree with the ice, because how I approach it varies from time to time. And I am not a daily practitioner or even a weekly practitioner or even a monthly practitioner. I do the breath and I do. So speak to that. So for me, the cold is the bitch. And I know it's where I need to lean in. But I love that it's 3 pillars, right? So you said mindset, breath, and cold exposure. And obviously, I would imagine, I'm going to ask you, but is it the best results with all 3? And can we get benefits if we're doing 1 or 2, if we don't have time or space to do the cold, or how does that work?
Yeah, sure. No, that's a great question. And, the actual Wim Hof method does deal with all three pillars. However, personally in my practice, some days I just do the breath work, and some days I'll just go jump in the cold water and maybe not do the breath that day. But generally speaking, if you combine the breath, the mindset training, and the cold exposure, you'll get the best results. However, that being said, just the breath work aspect of the Wim Hof method is very powerful and very calming. And so that can be practiced on its own. Sometimes I teach workshops with just the breath and we don't do the cold. However, it's very easy, even for you, Dr. Stormy, to incorporate the cold, because if you shower in the morning...
Damn it, I knew you were going to call me out on that.
Yes. You can just go ahead for that last 10 or 15 seconds, just go ahead and turn the faucet all the way cold. And I tell people, just feel the cold hitting your body and just observe the sensations you're feeling, and it won't feel nearly as cold. And then when you get out of the shower, just stand there for a moment and just say, okay, was that 15 seconds of discomfort worth how I feel right now? And go through your day and check in. And it's like, okay, if I feel great for the next 24 hours, was like 15 seconds worth it? And you can make that own determination yourself.
Amazing. Awesome. So cool. Yes. And thank you for the reminder to do my cold. It's funny. I actually do better when I get to go like to a workshop or to a group where I get to get into the ice bath, because it's like I mentally prepare differently, but again, that's my training. Like why would I not do it daily when I know how amazing, like you just said, I feel afterwards? And so, yeah, it's so awesome. And, as you were talking about the 3 pillars with breath, mindset, and cold exposure, but like I'm thinking of the breath and the mindset and slowing down, right? One of the things, right, we can slow our physiology and our neurochemistry down, certainly slow our thoughts and emotional state down. To me, obviously on this podcast, we talk about sex and sexuality, science, sex, and sacredness. Those are the 3 pillars of this podcast. And so what would you say, Jeremy, like how do you, notice, in people you've worked with or in your own journey, that this practice has also made you more present in the bedroom, more present with your own sexuality, more present if you're having partnered sex? Just love to hear you chat about that.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference for me with, sex and partner sex is just the fact that when I'm doing the breath and I'm practicing it, I'm just aware of the different sensations I'm feeling in my body. When I go into the cold, I'm also aware of those sensations, and I train myself and through this method to relax and just take whatever it is I'm getting from the breath, from the cold. So in the bedroom, I feel like I can be a better partner because I'm just more observant and aware of like maybe the cues or the energies from a partner. And it does allow you to just slow down and be more present in exactly what you're doing at that time, not be thinking about something else or wanting to be somewhere else. Just really being present with your emotions, your feelings. And I think it gives you the ability to go deeper.
Totally. I absolutely agree. Like you said, present with your emotions, your feelings, your senses, and your breath. Well, those are four very, I'm going to say magical, but very not very simple, powerful ways to have fabulous sex, to have better sex. And for those of you out there listening that aren't having partnered sex, this also goes for solo sex. Like I say to all my clients, I want you having fabulous sex with yourself, and then you can share that with a partner if that's consensual and you choose to. But really learning, but I love all of those aspects, right? So that's like kind of the anchored awareness, like you mentioned, slowing down, breath, and being with our senses, like falling back into our senses, into our body, and not dissociating, so to speak, into our thoughts and into our head.
Yeah. What I teach in the workshops is we have these three different levels of our brain, and we have this very ancestral deep part, which is our reptilian brain, which is also known as the brainstem. And that's where your hormones lie, your feel-good hormones, your serotonin, your dopamine. That's also where your instinct and your intuition and your basic human functions lie. Okay. Now, that part of the brain is very instrumental. I mean, it releases all our hormones, how we regulate mood and feelings. And then our next level of our brain is known as the mammalian brain, or your emotional brain. So that's where you feel your emotions, you feel empathy, you feel the feelings. And then finally, up at the front, we have our prefrontal cortex, or our neocortex, or our thinking brain. And this is the brain as adults we tend to use the most, because we have to think about things, past, present, future, job, work, relationship. And I don't know about you, Stormy, but sometimes I overthink things, and I think everybody tends to overthink things. And I tell people that, this part of the brain, the thinking brain, is highly important. However, sometimes we use that so much that we shut off our emotional brain, or our deepest level of our brain, and our brainstem that's responsible for our hormones and release, and our mood and instinct and intuition, and just all these deep-rooted things in our body. So if we can learn to not overthink things and be really present, then all these other deeper aspects of our brain are able to, in essence, flourish and feel these different sensations. So
I love that deeper connection between all three parts. Like you said, not just hanging out in my neocortex, which is where I hang out until I do my practices. It's where we all hang out, No, I love that. And I also love that, you like that you keep touching on being present. I love that you said earlier, because it's kind of a buzzword, like be present. And you're like, well, fuck you. How do I do that? Right. So these are really conscious, thoughtful, practical, embodied tools to practice presence.
Yeah. And it's not even like, okay, I got to be present when I do my breath work or my cold. It's just like the action of doing it makes you present. It allows you to get into deeper aspects of your brain and kind of shut off the thinking brain.
Right. And have you found, you mentioned slowing down too, which I think is a key part for how these kind of practices make us better lovers, because we tend to rush, right? Like the research for men is that you got about like 8 minutes from start of stimulation to ejaculation. And for women, it's more like 16 to 18. So therein right there lies a pleasure gap. But then like my work with clients is like, let's take this into the like 30, 45, 60-minute realm or more, so you can really savor, slow down, and enjoy. And it's a struggle because people, right, porn, past history, the way media shows sex and sexuality is like fast, furious, let's get to the orgasm, And in practice, right? So I'm so thankful to be sharing this time on this podcast today, because, when I work with my clients, we do it in a different way, where we're not doing Wim Hof Method, although I'm a huge fan of it. But we definitely do breath. We definitely do anchoring your awareness. We do sensory, and all these practices to help you learn to slow down and fall back into your sensation, not out into your head and out of your body. And so I'm just super thankful that these are 3 more tools for these 3 pillars, but Wim Hof Method in general is another powerful tool to practice this. And it will change your life. It will change your life in all the areas, like you said, Jeremy, just like when someone cuts you off or honks at you, but also it will make you a better lover. And who doesn't want that?
Of course. Yeah, no, it's
awesome.
It's been interesting in my life just because, you mentioned that 8-minute or 16-minute, wherever that pleasure gap is. And for me, because I can feel emotions and feelings and kind of the little sensations throughout my body, just because I've trained with the breathing and trained with the cold, because you just become more in tune with the different aspects of your body. So if you're, with your lover and making love, you're so much more aware of different feelings that are coming up. And, if you need to last a little bit longer, maybe just take some deep breaths and keep going and
Totally.
Go with your partner. So
that's amazing. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I love it. And so we do sexy homework on this podcast. So I'd love to have you give our listeners a few tips, whether that's to how to find Wim Hof in their town or just anything you could share that will help them to practice these 3 pillars.
Yeah, I'd say the best way to get started with it is Wim has an amazing app. If you go to either on Android or iPhone, you can go to Wim Hof Method and the app will show up and you can download that. And much of it is free and there's some paid aspects of it. But getting you started learning about Wim's story, and then there's some guided breath work videos on there that you can in essence follow along and start to feel what it feels like to breathe deep and just become more aware of the feelings in your body. And then, most people will shower daily or every other day. And, it's very easy, take a warm shower, wash yourself off, and then just go ahead and turn that faucet all the way cold. And for the first stage, just try 10 seconds, maybe 15 seconds. And then each day, maybe go 5 seconds longer and 5 seconds longer. And you might end up finding that you're just taking cold showers because the feeling and the sensations are good. So the easiest way to get started is just do some of the breathwork videos on that app and then take a cold shower. And the thing about the Wim Hof method is it's super simple. Like it's stupidly simple actually. And some people are like, is that it? I'm like, that's it. So it's not meant to, the breathwork might take 10 or 12 minutes in the morning or in the evening or wherever you want to practice it. And then if you're showering that day, it doesn't take any more time because you just turn the faucet cold for the last 15 seconds and then get out and get on with your day.
Awesome. Those are super great tips. And I love that. We know that we're much more likely to stick with things that are simple and practical. Like we don't have to and I will say, I don't enjoy the cold part, but obviously that's where I get to lean in because like you said, I feel so much better after I do it. It's pretty amazing actually. And we don't have to like it. I'm right on the edge. Maybe I'm going to come to your next workshop and get into the ice bath for sure. But awesome. So we also do a speed round, a little bit of, we're all about cultivating and building intimacy. So with our guests, so I have the 3 pillars are sex, science, and sacredness. So for you, Jeremy, in your life right now, when do you feel most sexy and powerful?
When I'm with an amazing woman.
Awesome. Beautiful. Brings out your king, right? That's awesome. Beautiful. And then what about science right now? Obviously you're teaching Wim and going around the country. So it might be something in there, but anything that really lights you up about science right now that you're excited to study and share?
I'm super excited with science. I'm super excited with the Wim Hof method is heavily backed in science. I studied sports medicine in school, and even back in school when we were doing tests and experiments, they'd be like, okay, make sure you control for the placebo effect. I'm like, okay, so the placebo effect, how you actually heal yourself just thinking about it and think you took a medicine. Okay. All right. So we control for this. And they're like, remove that. That's bad. And I'm like, why is that bad? We just literally healed ourselves by thinking about it. So I think the studies and I think the Western world is starting to accept more of this intrinsic healing that we can do. It doesn't necessarily have to be this pill that we go to the doctor from. Like, we have our own pharmacy. Like, we are able to heal ourselves. Our bodies have the ability if we give it the right tools. And I just think the Wim Hof Method is a fantastic tool to bring that out.
Super cool. Amazing. Yeah, I love it. And there's so much cool research. It's like, I think it's San Francisco or Stanford. Like, they have amazing studies on Wim and then just on his methodology, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, tens, like, studies all around the world that are happening on cancer, autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, spinal diseases, like I said, cancers, hormonal system, brain scans are being done. So it's a method that is great because it's more like, Eastern philosophy with the cold and the mindset, but then the Western side of it of, okay, here's the concrete science. This is actually what's happening. And this are the benefits you get from this holistic practice.
Yeah, and that's for me, as my background is in medicine, and I love the Eastern meets Western. To me, for me personally, and what I've seen with my clients, that's a sweet, yummy spot that our culture is hopefully stepping more and more into. Awesome. And then the third pillar is sacredness. So what feels sacred in your life right now?
What feels sacred? Ooh, that's a good question. I think my health is always rather sacred because I just went through a little bout of having a little virus, like I think from a bunch of sanding and working, and it affected my lungs, and it wasn't COVID, but it was something else. And it's been so long since I've been sick. And so when I had that sickness, I realized like how sacred health is and how sacred it is to take care of yourself, because that's, at the end of the day, this is all we got.
It is all we got. So beautiful. And it is so sacred. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing those things. And how can our listeners and watchers find you and your work and follow you around to your workshops and all the things?
Yeah. The best way to follow me is on my Instagram at jeremy.wilstein. I'll post some events on there. I'll post what I'm doing, and, feel free to send me a message. Email wise, jeremy.wilstein@gmail.com.
Awesome.
So those are the best ways to get a hold of me.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing your time and your brilliance today with our listeners.
Thank you. I appreciate having me on. Good to see you again.
Awesome. Good to see you too. And thank you to our listeners and our viewers for tuning in today. And thank you for being brave and opening your hearts to love deep.